Welcome to the first postseason edition of 4th and 1 ever, right? I mean, we started this in training camp, so that was a preseason edition. Then we carried it through all the season. Chiefs season now over. This would be postseason edition number 1, and we've already got some news. I don't know if you heard, but the church bells rang out, I believe, across Kansas City when the Chiefs announced that Bob Sutton would no longer be the defensive coordinator. I know, look, I'm not a guy who likes to celebrate people losing their jobs and stuff like that. Although I will say, I think he's probably doing okay financially, and I think he'll probably be able to survive this. Still feel bad for the guy, but ultimately, this absolutely had to happen, right? We talked about it multiple times during the season. Bob Sutton, whether you want to say the game had passed him by, or he couldn't make adjustments, whatever criticism you want, the Chiefs needed a fresh start on that side of the ball, and they got it.
I poured a bottle of butterscotch out for him. You know,
that's Nick Jacobs, always bringing the sass on the podcast.
I did. I poured a bottle of butterscotch out for him to remember him one final time. So, yeah, I mean, look.
To be fair, on Saturday you did walk over to my desk and just toss 2 butterscotch on my desk. So he's not completely pulling your guy's leg.
I did. I wanted you to remember the good times.
That made us laugh.
Please stop.
All right. I look. No, so I shouldn't go into Motown Philly back again.
Anyways.
All right, Boys to Men. Shout out. All right.
Yeah. So.
Well, no, it's. I think it's appropriate to mention Philadelphia though, because obviously there's a connection to Philadelphia for the man that has been brought in to replace Bob Sutton. Fairly clear based on the timing that the Chiefs already had their man identified when they decided to move away from Bob Sutton, because it took next to no time for them to say that Steve Spagnuolo, former Rams head coach, defensive coordinator at the Giants when they beat the at the time undefeated New England Patriots dynasty in 2007 in the Super Bowl. He who was an assistant under Jim Johnson on some of Andy Reid's Eagles staffs, was hired remarkably quickly.
Well, I'm not going to speculate anything like you just did. But what I will say is they were speedy in their process, and we don't know who they did or didn't interview and how many people were involved in that process. But we do know that it was announced that Bob was relieved of his duties on Tuesday, and that, they hired Spagnuolo on Thursday.
I'm just saying it feels like there was a short list in place.
Probably so. Well, and it doesn't hurt that Steve Spagnuolo and Brett Veach and Andy Reid all share the same agent, Bob Lamont. That doesn't hurt at all whenever the GM and head coach share the same agent as you. So you're able to get stuff done in a speedy, timely manner in that regard, because you already know the contracts of the head coach and the general manager. So you can get that all situated however you want, what options you do, all that type of stuff. So you can get that hammered out pretty quickly. So
maybe you and I should get the same agent so we can, when we renegotiate the 4th and 1 podcast contract, we can capitalize on that.
I don't need anybody taking any money out of my pocket.
Except for the guy at Panda Express on Sundays, game days, right?
No, that's that tradition.
Unlike any other.
The tradition will be moving away from that one.
Oh no. Uh-oh. All right. Well, you heard it here first. Breaking. All right. Okay, but in all seriousness, I mean, Bob Sutton ran a 3.4.
Yeah.
It was ineffective. I know there were some people. Well, first of all, let's talk about one of the candidates that we heard a lot of people talk about was Rex Ryan. It's a sexy name out there. Rex is still an analyst and stuff like that. Here's the problem, and tell me if I'm speculating too much or if you find what I'm saying inaccurate, sir. But Rex Ryan, just like Bob Sutton, runs a 3.4. Maybe Rex runs a little bit more aggressive version of it, but same defense that was a failure, and that one could argue they didn't have the proper personnel to run either.
Right.
And if you go back and you look, one of the complaints before he got axed as the DC up in Buffalo was that his scheme was simply, head coach up in Buffalo, was that his scheme was too complex. It was too difficult for the players to digest, and it impeded their ability to play in a fast, aggressive manner on the field because they were doing too much thinking and doing way too much reading, not enough reacting. I feel like those exact same criticisms were levied against Bob Sutton's defenses, especially the last couple of years, and it begs the question: especially if you were adamant that Bob Sutton had to go, why would you want to bring in a roided up version of Bob Sutton and think that was going to be effective?
That's like the worst image you can put in my head. Just him lifting weights. Let's get 10 more.
I thought you were going to say it was a terrible analogy. So then I was going to try to work in a Bob Sutton foot fetish type thing that was even going to be even worse. But I mean, do you think that it would have made any sense to stick with the 3-4 when it looks like, I mean, schematically they've got personnel that's really kind of built for a 4-3 anyway in a lot of ways.
I mean, here's the whole aspect of it for me. For that scheme that Sutton and Rex Ryan were both running to work, you need veterans. You need lots of veterans. You need guys that have been in the league and understand offenses, know how to read them inside and out, and all that aspect. So you need that for starters. Guys that have been in the league, ideally 3 to 7 years that you can have execute your scheme. Guess what? Those guys cost money.
Those are very expensive.
So those aren't exactly playing for vet minimum on a regular basis.
And the best one that the Chiefs had from that standpoint was probably Eric Berry, and he's been out the last 2 years.
And he's definitely not playing for vet minimum.
Well, and I mean, look, I mean, the correlation in the Chiefs defense tanking seems to be seems to be in line with the playing time of one Eric Berry.
Well, for me, the correlation's in 2015, that playoff game against the Patriots. That was the peak of where your defense was. That was when they were in the top 10 and both run and pass. And that was the final time where you had a team that could pressure the quarterback, stop the run, and cover like the scheme required and requested.
Yeah.
After that, that's when things started going downhill. That's when the run defense started going back downhill, and then it got worse, and then it got downright awful this year. And same thing happened for the pass. You just had Marcus Peters to be able to mask some things with his interceptions to kind of tide you over a little bit from being downright terrible the year before. And what happened during that time? The veterans got older. The veterans athletically couldn't execute in the same way, and then you had to say goodbye to them.
Yeah, Derek Johnson.
And move on from him and Tamba. And you saw Justin have his injuries. Eric Berry had his injuries. Sean Smith got, moved on to the Raiders. They didn't keep him after 2015. And then, and then you go from there. Ford had his injuries. Dante Poe had his back injury, and they let him walk. So you lost a ton of what made your defense what it was, and you just didn't have guys that are capable of doing that scheme. So, I mean, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. And Sutton wasn't a guy who was going to be capable to adjust to younger personnel and to make the reads simpler. It was kind of, he's got a square peg and
set in his ways.
And whatever object he has in the hand, it's going to fit in that square peg, and that's just the way it's going to be. So, didn't work out. Time for him to move on. And if all of you out there want to buy some butterscotch and pour one out for him, hey, go ahead. Or just use it on some ice cream.
Do you like the Spagnuolo hire? I mean, do you feel like he, because people are going to say, oh, look, I mean, the last few years when he was with, the Giants, and before that when he was with the Rams,
and the Saints after Bountygate.
Oh, yeah, Bountygate. But the NFL ranks for his defenses in terms of points per game, yards per game, weren't exactly sterling. Now, you can look, I mean, some of that is understandable when you consider what the dynamic that the Rams were going through was when he was head coach, what the mess he inherited after Greg Williams, and the Bountygate scandal happened in New Orleans. Mm-hmm. What happened with the Giants? The
Giants were a mess when he got there.
Similar to what happened, with the Chiefs here. That they got older, things kind of fell apart. I mean, they went from having these championship level defenses to not really having a succession plan for some of those guys, and he steps into kind of a talentless void, and obviously, and then his best player blows his hand off in fireworks events and stuff like that, and you got some issues going on there in New York.
Not events. It wasn't like he went on tour. It was a one-time incident.
But I mean, I think if you're looking to make excuses for why he didn't have as much success there, I think you can make them. But I also understand that some people may not feel like it's a sexy hire. But I would say the Andy Reid Jim Johnson partnership was fairly successful. This is a guy off that tree. So do you like the hire?
Here's the thing the first thing I mentioned to a lot of people is that this year was the first time Andy Reid went back to a conference championship game since Jim Johnson was his defensive coordinator before he unfortunately passed away from cancer.
Yeah.
So Andy hadn't been back to that mountaintop again since. This was the first time he got back there. And if, in my opinion, if he had a more aggressive defense, or if they had Kareem Hunt in that game without his incidents and issues, Chiefs we're talking about we're still doing a podcast about Chiefs headed to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, we're not doing an off-season podcast.
We're not doing an off-season podcast, but that's the way it worked out this year because the two defining moments in the organization in 2018 helped make that happen, unfortunately, and they weren't great. So that's what derailed that aspect of seeing one of the greatest offenses possible in the Super Bowl. But instead, got to watch Patrick Mahomes in the Pro Bowl on Sunday.
Well, we'll get to that. Yeah. We'll get to that.
So, but yeah, I mean, the Spagnuolo hire, I totally get it. Andy trusts him. Andy knows what he's going to do scheme wise. Veach understands what they want scheme wise because Veach was there when Jim Johnson was there, and what the talent level required. So he fully understands how to scout for that and to do that. And I think a lot of that 2018 draft class that people seemed to be upset about was a lot of those guys. So I mean, I think that I'm not against the hire. We'll see if he's aggressive as I want him to be, and if he's able to give looks that can confuse the quarterback and keep him on edge. If he's able to do those things and force turnovers and get the ball back to the offense, then that's really all that matters.
And I mean, I think, yes, it was a safe hire. Yes, it was a predictable hire. But honestly, you and I on the podcast, maybe not so much on the podcast, but certainly in private conversations, the guys we have talked
Don't tell people about our private conversations.
Oh, I'm not going to tell
I told you that in confidence.
I'm not going to tell them about that one. Don't worry, Scott Winkler. It was nothing. He's probably listening. I mean, he'll get a kick out of that. He'll be giggling at his desk. People wonder what's going on. Scott's our HR guy, by the way. But if I mean, look, Steve Wilkes was a guy that I thought would have made sense. Todd Bowles is a guy that I thought would have made sense. Ron Rivera was a guy that I thought would have made sense. But two of the three, Wilkes and Bowles, ended up going elsewhere before the Chiefs had an opening, before their season was over.
And for people who don't know, Wilkes went to the Browns and Bowles went to the Bucs with Arians.
And then you had Ron Rivera ended up staying in Carolina, so he wasn't available. And so, I mean, when you kind of whittle down the list of guys, knowing Andy Reid's tendency to go with what he's familiar with and what he's comfortable with, when you kind of whittled it down, Spagnuolo was the one guy that was left out there that didn't have, if you're playing like the musical chairs game, he's the one guy who hadn't found a chair yet. So I think it was it made sense that he was going to be the hire. And look, you can criticize it for being a safe hire, but
if it gets him a Super Bowl, that's all that matters.
The thing. If that's what Andy's comfortable with, and that's who he's going to go with, I guess in this sense,
if that's
and Andy we trust, right?
That's what gets them to the mountaintop. That's all that matters.
Yeah, and Andy we trust. So anyway, when we come back after this break, let's talk about personnel and who we think fits into what we assume will be a new 4-3 scheme. Welcome back to 4th and 1. I'm Todd Palmer, joined by Nick Jacobs. I feel like I did a very poor job of introducing us at the outset of this podcast, but I also feel like most people listen to this podcast listen to it fairly regularly.
I hope so.
So they probably know that.
Thanks, Mom.
That I'm the handsome one and you're the smart one. So
I don't care. Whatever helps you sleep at night, you title me however you want, as long as it's not hurtful.
All right. Well, there you go. Well, that's brilliant, Nick Jacobs. I am debonair Todd Palmer. And we're going to talk personnel now, because obviously,
not only on this podcast do you get to learn about personnel and football schemes, you also get to have Todd use big words.
That's right. It's part of my narrative.
Oh boy!
But obviously, anytime you talk about going from a 3-4 to a 4-3, the question becomes, who needs to go from that roster? Because there are going to be guys that just don't fit anymore. Reggie Ragland's a guy that I think. Not sure he fit in the 3-4 they were running either, the way they were using him.
Yeah.
But probably not going to be able to flourish as a middle linebacker. I mean, he could be an early down guy, or if you're facing like the Ravens circa 3 weeks ago when all they were doing was running the ball, Ragland's a guy that'll be fine. But in today's pass happy NFL, he's Breland Speaks-ish, and not in a good way.
Wow.
I mean, am I wrong?
Those are some hurtful words there, Todd. What I'll say is with Reggie Ragland, the reason he got traded from Buffalo when Sean McDermott's scheme, who is kind of a blend of what the Ron Rivera runs with the Panthers and also what he learned under the Spagnuolo Johnson tree whenever he was there in Philly too. It's a blend of cover two because Leslie Frazier, who's also from Philly, runs that as a defensive coordinator up there in Buffalo. So it's kind of a blend of a multitude things. Do what?
Every time someone says Buffalo, I feel like I have to say Tatanka because I've watched Dance with Wolves too many times. But continue. I'm sorry to interrupt your train of thought.
Thanks, Todd. That was dynamite drop in right there.
Totally nailed it.
Oh, boy. Anyways, sorry, I actually cleared my throat. I didn't want to cough that time. But Reggie Ragland, he struggles in coverage. He struggles to drop in zone, and that's the reason the Bills wanted to move on from him. What his skill set and strength is, he's what I like to call a thumper, to where if you give him one gap, that's your gap, you attack that gap, he's completely fine. If you tell him, hey, I want you to go blitz this gap, he's fine. And he's more of a straight line blitzer and attacker. But if you need him to run sideline to sideline, or if you need him to drop into zone coverage, he's not comfortable in either. So in this scheme, I just personally don't think there's going to be a home for him or a fit here in Kansas City.
Is there anybody else from that starting group or that core group of defensive players this year that you think just absolutely there's no home for him?
Well, let's see here. Ragland is definitely one I didn't feel there was going to be home for him.
But Hitchens is a guy who he came from a 4-3 system where he played strong side with Dallas and played well. I mean, the Chiefs gave him a 5-year, $45 million contract based on that. You would assume that obviously there's a role for him, and you would assume that he will be better moving back to something he's familiar with than he was trying to change his identity this year, because it was clear that he wasn't comfortable. It was clear that he was a guy who was having the issues that we talked about with the Sutton, with the Rex Ryan system, where he was thinking too much and he wasn't ever comfortable out on the field. At least that was my read from the way he played, because he had moments, he had bright moments, but he also had moments where he looked lost and terrible, and like he was, instead of playing with an edge, was just trying to absorb contact. Like he was, you could almost see him think, am I in the right? Oh, good. That guy just ran me over. I think I was in the right place though. But I think he'll be better. He's a guy who benefits from going to the 4-3, right?
Yeah. He is one of the many players that I see benefiting from this. Yeah, but like the question you're asking, Ragland's one I don't think it's going to work out well for him. Then I also think that it's going to be somewhat of a struggle for,
Dan Sorensen.
I think is another one where it's going to be a struggle for him. I just don't think athletically it's going to work out for him in that system. And safety-wise, it's going to be very intriguing what they do with the strong safety who needs to be run support and cover. And then also, Jordan Lucas is actually, I think, he can be the free safety in the system, and I think he can do well, and he could match up with tight ends if they need him to. I truly like Jordan Lucas in the system, but I liked him in the last system too, and I hope they take full advantage of him as a restricted free agent. And I think Kendall Fuller can do well.
Kendall Fuller, I think, and Travarius Ward will be fine. I think.
Yeah, I think there's some things they're going to have to evaluate, and I think they're going to need an insurance policy for him just in case.
Yeah, but there's a place for him.
There's opportunity right now, and we'll see what happens with Terrence Smith.
Yeah. But in terms of who are some guys, and maybe Alan Bailey is a guy who, that's more of a medical issue though than it is a worry about can he, move inside and be a 3 or 1 technique, right?
I think it's going to be a blend of financial and also. I think they're just going to have to get younger and faster on the defensive line collectively.
So, but who are some guys who you think could benefit from this move?
I think Breland Speaks.
Absolutely. I mean,
it will be a strong. I think it'll be a strong side defensive end. Him and maybe Houston, depending on what they do with potential restructure if there's something there they can restructure on that.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, honestly, when Breland Speaks was drafted, a lot of people kind of scratched their heads because they didn't feel like he made sense as a 3-4 outside linebacker, as a 3-4 rush linebacker.
Yeah,
he was always projected to be better as a 4-3 defensive end. But I almost, if you look at the draft, the last draft last April, and you look at Dorian O'Daniel, who I think we agree is a potential fit at weak side linebacker.
Yeah,
played exceptionally well there at Clemson in a similar role. Has the cover skills and some of the things you look for. Breland Speaks, who's really more of a 4-3 kind of defensive end anyway. And then you look at Armani Watts, and guys like that. It almost seems like they were drafting with a change to a 4-3 in mind. When they were making some of these picks. 8 months ago.
All I'm saying is they seem like they're going to work out for him this year. That they have the opportunity to. And to continue on, Derek Nottie is a guy who's going to do, I think he'll be a good.
Way better as a one technique.
I think he'll be good as a one tech for him. And then Chris Jones is going to have a monster year as a 3 tech. If they allow him to do that. And that weak side defensive end, we'll see what happens with D Ford. Or if D Ford's not the guy, then I think they're going to have to. They're going to have to invest in free agency and also in the draft to find that stud pass rusher on that side that can do that.
I mean, I feel like there's a guy who
there's going to be.
I feel like there's a guy from town who might fit well at that. Who grew up in town who might fit well at that weak side spot.
I think there's going to be a lot of talented people, and there's going to be a couple guys from Denver that I think potentially could be available as rushers and maybe as a corner.
Yeah.
And I think there's going to be. I'm curious to see what Jacksonville does with their defensive line and their corner and secondary situation because they're going to have to get rid of some cap to add a quality quarterback to replace Bortles. So
Nick Foles is going to cost like $20 million a year.
He should. I'd ask for that to be with the Jaguars. So, yeah. I mean, we'll see what happens. The Chiefs, I think, whether it's draft or free agency, they need to add some. And we'll do articles about this in the offseason and everything. But they're definitely going to have to add to that defensive line, so that they can rotate the guys in with who they already have. They're going to have to figure out either strong side or middle linebacker, depending what road they want to go with Hitchens. And then obviously corner, everybody already knew to begin with. And then if Landon Collins becomes available from the Giants, that's a guy who already knows Steve Spagnuolo's scheme. So that's a guy that I would personally make sure you go add.
Yeah, I would at least track down his agent's phone number.
Whenever it's accepted on March. Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, if I'm Brett Veach, I might have that ready to go.
Sure.
In March. Just in case.
In March.
Just in case. Yeah. No tampering, guys. We don't need to lose any draft picks. But we will tamper the heck out of Landon Collins and tell him that we think he would look good in red and gold.
Is there anybody else you want to tell that you think would look good in red and gold?
Jalen Ramsey, if you want to try to force a trade. I am not going to say no to Jalen Ramsey.
Nobody else?
I mean, like I covered Shane Ray when I was at Mizzou, and he's got the tattoos for the job. I'll put it that way. So,
do you think that would come up in a job interview?
Well, I don't think there's any. I don't think.
Do you put that on special skills on LinkedIn?
Yeah, maybe. But I don't think Denver fans have ever really gotten over that, and probably never will. But if he and Chris Harris want to mosey on down I-70, I don't think anybody around here should be too disappointed in that.
Well, we'll see how it works out.
So, and those are just a few names that are out there that could be intriguing. And obviously, you never know what's going to shake out. And obviously, it's so hard to predict what the Chiefs could do in the draft at this point because, one, you haven't seen the scouting combine yet. I know I haven't got to go, pour over tape and look at who's available. And with the Chiefs drafting 29 overall, I mean, it's almost impossible to predict what's going to happen with those first 28 picks. So who's really going to be there at 29? It's rife with speculation, and we will enjoy speculating the heck out of it during the coming months. But yeah, right now, I mean, I don't know. Do you have fun talking about this kind of thing right now? Talking about possibilities and trying to put the puzzle pieces together, playing your own Brett Veach in your head right now?
Yeah, I mean, no, I'll have some articles about it, about some team needs. and a handful of other things that I traditionally do this type of year. So we'll be able to do that, and we'll go from there.
All right, and we're going to come back. We'll talk briefly about the offense, and then also get to that Pro Bowl that Nick is so eager to break down. I'm sure. Are you going to do a Jacob's Eye in the Sky on the Pro Bowl?
No.
All right. I tried, folks. I tried. You heard. All right. We'll be back on 4th and 1. Welcome back to 4th and 1. Real quick, we talked a lot about the defense, and for obvious reasons, because that's where the changes occurred. But there are some free agents on offense that are going to come up as well. Some guys that may or may not be back. Is the first one that jumps out to me is Mitch Morse, just because that center quarterback bond, that center quarterback chemistry is still important. And obviously that's the guy that Patrick has worked the most with, is Mitch Morse, who's obviously he's missed a few games here and there, but that's obviously the guy he's worked the most with. And he's a guy contract up, unclear what's going to happen there. But anybody else besides Mitch that you're looking at and thinking thumbs up, thumbs down?
Well, I'll have an article coming out on this before too long. But
at kshb.com/Chiefs.
Yes.
All right. Good to know.
See, that exact place right there.
Good deal.
Yeah, I don't anticipate Chris Conley being back here. Personally, I wouldn't bring back Conley. I wouldn't bring back Demetrius Harris. Those are your big two. I'm not against Morse coming back for like vet minimum. I'd love to have him here as depth rotation. I'd love to have Jeff Allen here as depth rotation. So it's just less you have to worry about initially in training camp if there are injuries and everything. But we'll see what ends up happening there. I think D'Anthony Thomas is a guy that, given the incident that occurred on Sunday, I think it's finally. That's not the reason. Man. That's not the reason. But I mean, he's been here 5 years and really hasn't been able to make much of an impact other than at gunner.
Well, and then he broke his leg last year, missed the entire season. So
most of it, and then he had previously broken it in Denver. So he'd broken it twice in a year span, basically.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't think. I don't think it's going to work out for him, but yeah. I mean, those are kind of the big ones that you mark down for the most part.
And let's be honest, obviously we are not.
Anthony Sherman is someone I'd bring back, obviously though.
Well, yeah,
he had a great Pro Bowl. It's just a preview of his future right there.
Well, real quick though, before we move on to the Pro Bowl, if you're in your car, in the bathroom, wherever you're listening to this podcast. If you had forgotten that D'Anthony Thomas was on the roster before you found out about what he was up to in Allen County over the weekend, raise your hand. I had kind of forgotten he was.
I hope you're not raising your hand if you're driving your car right now. Please don't.
All right. Now, just send your insurance claim my way. I mean, we've already got a couple, so we're good.
This disclaimer is not.
Yeah, brought to you by the General. But okay, now let's get to the fun stuff. The Pro Bowl. Apparently, anytime the guys go on a food run at the stadium, Anthony Sherman gets shotgun in Patrick Mahomes' car for eternity after the Pro Bowl deal. Is that? I think that's what I saw on Twitter.
It sounded like that's what Mahomes was offering up.
That's right. All-time shotgun for Anthony Sherman, who had almost as many touches in the Pro Bowl as he did in the entire season for the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes, of course, wins MVP, led 2 touchdown drives as the AFC dominated the game. What impressed you the most about the Pro Bowl?
It was just fun watching Mahomes throw the football again, because we're not going to the sad thing is we're not going to see that till probably most people won't see it till the end of July, early August.
I was going to say, you have NFL Game Pass. You will see it at least twice a day.
I'm saying in the moment to where I can't be able to predict where he's throwing.
Yeah. No, it'll have to be like wistful, tear-filled watching Patrick Mahomes highlights as opposed to him
and what's so
making
funny
new
is
moments.
Now that my wrist is back to normal and everything, I was able to play Madden the other day.
Yeah.
And it's
have they grossly underestimated Patrick Mahomes' ability on that game?
It's not the rating. It's like there's stuff he can do that you can't even do in the video game. This video game's not authentic anymore. They don't have the side pass or the no look.
Well, I'll tell you, do they have the Drew Lock underhand pass that he busted out in the Senior Bowl?
No, they don't have any of it.
They don't have that, yeah.
But I am a little afraid that Mahomes is going to be on the cover this year in Madden.
Oh, see? And then it's all over.
So if they want to pick anybody but Patrick Mahomes, that would be neat.
Put Tom Brady on there again. Let's just get it over with.
Yeah, put Tom Brady on there.
Get it over with, guys. Because I don't know if you heard, but he's still here.
Yeah, he's yeah, oh yeah. Said that, and then he also said that he's not retiring after the Super Bowl no matter what. And I'm like, you know, I would say the same thing if I had that offensive line coach. But once that offensive line coach is gone, you may want to shut down the shop on that one.
So, okay, what do you think was the most important aspect of the Pro Bowl this week? Because I know what I think, and I think it's probably the same thing you think.
Let's hear yours first.
Well, one thing that I've always talked about, if a coach has a chance to coach in the NFL or in college, all things being equal, I think they're insane if they coach in college. The reason being, yes, there's arguably more pressure at the NFL level, money's kind of a wash though, but the 24/7, 365 recruiting cycle where you've got to be trying to convince 17, 18-year-old kids to come to play for you, I just think that would wear you down. That would be hard to do, especially if you had a family and stuff like that. That's the one thing that I always think is a bummer. Andy Reid has the benefit of he just sends Patrick Mahomes to the Pro Bowl and says, Patrick, you come recruit, you go recruit.
Hey, let's make this clear right now. We do not know that Andy Reid said that.
Well, no, I'm not implying that, but I'm saying
you literally just implied it.
Andy Reid doesn't have to recruit.
No.
He just, Patrick Mahomes can go down and have fun and not tackle Patriots mascots and send them to the hospital. But make lots of friends. Make lots of friends. I guess, Yeah,
that's what I put on Twitter a handful of times this week. I hope he goes down to, his Pro Bowl summer camp and, goes and makes a lot of free agent friends. It'd be fun.
The other thing was nobody got hurt, so good on that.
I mean, technically Keenan Allen had a knee bruise. So.
Chiefs players.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
What do I care about Chargers? Come on now.
All right.
I can't even remember what town they play in, for the love of Pete.
Okay.
All right. You got anything else to add, man, or are we going to let people off the hook?
No,
did we cover all the bases?
I feel like you've tackled most of it, other than if anybody didn't know that the outside linebacker coach, Mike Smith, has left, and he went to Green Bay on Friday. So Chiefs will have to figure that out, and maybe we'll see what ends up happening when the Chiefs send out the press release on coaching staff, what did or didn't happen.
Could be a lot more changes there. I mean, obviously, the DC the defensive coordinator's changed with Spagnuolo.
Yeah.
The scheme presumably will change. Wouldn't be shocked if there were some other changes among the assistant coaches. But let's be honest, blowing it up and remaking that defense, the bar doesn't have to be exceptionally high, but it's got to improve for the Chiefs to get where they want to go. I don't know about you, but I think they made some positive progress in that direction.
Yeah, I believe they did, and we'll see how the following months go. March and April will be big months for them in terms of taking that next step. So they took the first step. Now we'll see where they do in those two things and go from there.
All right. And we will be talking to you plenty as free agency and draft time unfold here on 4th and 1. You kids be good.
Say goodbye, Todd.
Goodbye, Todd.